Leia Healthcare. It's good to live. Proud sponsor of the Real Health podcast with Carl Henry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Real Health Podcast with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. Folks, this week we're continuing our health masterclasses with our third episode with health experts in really different areas of health. This week I'm delighted to be joined by Flannery, aka the gut friend of the Vitality Centre, talking all about gut health. Take simple takeaways and simple tips to improve the health of your gut and your tummy and your bowels and all that lovely stuff that we don't like to talk about. We're going to talk lots of things to improve your gut. Frances, welcome to the Real Health Podcast.
Thanks so much, Danny.
How's things?
Grand, walking the walk, trying to.
Good.
Talking the talk, and now universe is making me walk the walk, so I'm following my own programme. We're going through a big change opening up on Grafton Street, Vitality Centre, so it's a lot of practicing what I preach in terms of managing, your well-being and your stress and your mental health and all that.
So talk to us about gut health. For our listeners who may have read about it or seen it somewhere, what is it? What's the definition of it?
Right. Okay. So the gut, by definition, is any part of the digestive tract. That's really, that's it. So, going right back to basics, when we talk about gut health, it's become a real buzz term because probiotics are a very sellable thing, and there's a lot of marketing on that. So we generally talk about gut health. What we're talking about refers to the bowel.
Okay.
If you take the part that we're hearing a lot about, that's probiotics. Probiotics are the gut flora. They are the seeds that make the good gut bacteria in the bowel. They populate within the walls of the colon, bowel. 3 words for the same organ as well, just to make it more difficult. Colon, bowel, large intestine, and now generally we have gut as well. So those 4 terms, we hear them a lot. They all are the same thing, and that's generally where we're talking about with gut health.
Okay. And what are you seeing, I suppose, with clients that you work with in terms of gut health problems? And I suppose we'll start with the symptoms first of all, and then we'll go into how we can improve that. But what are the symptoms of bad gut health if people are listening in? Okay,
so gut health is a term. It's going back to where it falls. I like to talk about where it falls in between. Is it, because people get confused, they say, well, sometimes you go to your doctor and your doctor says, maybe it's gut health issues. And you think, well, am I sick? Am I well? Where am I? It's not a sickness. It's not a pathology. It's not a disease. So where is it? You are well, but not well enough. And so what are the symptoms generally of gut problems? We're talking about the bowel, the colon, the large intestine. The symptoms? Bloating. Your doctor's probably going to dismiss you. You might feel dismissed and you think, oh, well, I do feel terrible. But, bloating, constipation. Nobody wants to talk about that. Mm-hmm. But when the bowel doesn't move, it causes great problems.
How often should the bowel move? Is it daily? Is it every 2 days? What's the norm?
You hear different things, and it is different for different people. It really depends. But in general, your bowel, if you have a feeling of incompleteness when you go to the bathroom, or you're generally feeling stuffed or blocked up, or they're your main key points. Mm-hmm. But in Eastern medicine, it's 3 times a day.
A day.
They aim that your bowel moves after every meal. Now, there'd be very few people that would achieve that in our world, in the Western world, but that's the aim, So, it really depends. If somebody has a feeling of incompleteness when they go to the bathroom, if they're feeling bloated after meals, those are really the more key factors. For some people, it's 2 days. Every 2 days they go to the bathroom. For some people, it's every day. And for some people who are really, really troublesome, it's I've seen people 2 weeks. I've seen it turning up on I've seen people referred by radiologists because it's on a scan. They go in thinking they've got some serious pains in their abdominal, and they do a scan, like an X-ray, and this stuff shows up. So you're talking about some serious matter there as well. So and that's ordinary people. That's wellness. That's not sick. They get dismissed and they're told, go away. And that's the person who comes a lot of the time that finds themselves coming to us because there's very little, apart from laxatives and things like that you can go to get it back, get your bowel back to even. That's really not great. You want it back to well. How do you do that? Clear it out. That's the first thing. Clear it out. So what I do, or where we go with it in terms of gut health, it's very structured because I'm 10 years developing it. Okay. And my mother was a psychotherapist and nurse before me, so we're standing on the shoulders of giants with that one. And we say clear, imbalanced gut flora, like Candida and various things. We all know the Western world, we all take antibiotics, so we have these things. And, constipation, like the pipes. Could you imagine the pipes in your house, the plumbing after years, or in your car all blocked up? Clear it away. Plant, bring in the good gut flora, so that's the probiotics. Fertilise, whole foods, foods that feed us, that our body can recognise, non-synthetic whole foods, natural foods. And, be protective of it. So just be cognizant of the way we approach, antibiotics, or how we do approach the way we look after ourselves. Maybe not to take them unless we really need them.
And in terms of, I suppose, people now are looking for the quick fix solution for lots of things. And they're buying probiotics, prebiotics, different brands, different versions, different strains, eating certain foods, fermented foods and the like. In terms of supplements and supplementation, are there ones particularly that work or that work quite well? Do they not work? What's your take on them?
Okay. Yes, there are. Some are better than others. It's true. But let's think about why. When we take something orally, it must go through the entire digestive tract. That's the stomach, the small intestine. And their key functions are to digest and to take away and to kill bacteria. So we want this probiotic populates or grows its seed in our bowel. That's at the end of the journey, So it's 22 feet later. We have to get it there. When we take it orally, we are dependent on it not being broken down by the natural job that the body wants to do. But if you think of it in that way, when you have major gut flora imbalancing situation going on, it's like a weed. Could you imagine ivy growing all over your stuff, all over your garden or somewhere like that? And you put the seeds into that garden. That's like the probiotic, because you want to grow more healthy stuff that's not a weed. We don't take that approach. We take the approach, let's pull the ivy out, let's clear the weeds, and let's put the probiotic, put the seed into the new garden. And that's the approach. So it's clearing and then planting.
Let's chat gut health and mental health then.
Yeah.
And in terms of the obvious one to start with for me would be stress and the impact of stress on your gut health.
Absolutely, yeah.
Huge factor.
Huge. Why though? Well, that's the other. So we've two major things going on. We've three actually, but the two we've touched on: gut health or probiotics or gut flora. That's one major part of gut health. The second is that up to 90% of your serotonin is produced by your bowel. Now your bowel or colon or gut or large intestine, all the same thing as we say. That's a 5-foot long organ. I say to people, look, we're 1/3 bowel. Imagine all that, all that there. That's your bowel. So, what's happening? Well, your serotonin is produced there, and say why? Why is it? Well, imagine the journey of moving matter along this 5 foot, and it has to go up and around and down. This is what's happening. So it's all we get really into it. We get really deep inside and bring up the truth, bring up the things people, don't often talk about. But that's what's happening. And so it's thought that serotonin, a big part of it is to move matter along.
Okay.
If that serotonin, if that movement stops, you will find yourself feeling down because the serotonin movement stops as well. And that affects your mood. But other things can affect you. Food can aggravate also and cause the bowel to spasm. So food intolerance testing is very important to identify triggers. So when you clear and you restore and you replant, and then you look at the triggers, possibly food, very surprising healthy foods like vegetables and fruit can often be the trigger. So it's really, it's a real program to look at, to restore and then to correct the diet by identifying triggers.
Improvements. I know you have kind of commandments that you work off. The simplest tips that you can give us for our listeners, and we'll go through them and have a little bit of a chat about each one. So I suppose varying your diet presumably is one, or eating a varied diet.
Eating a varied diet is so important. I see that a lot with people that develop food intolerances. We were not meant to have the same food accessible to us 365 days a year, So we have them now. So just looking at your food on a seasonal level, looking at it seasonally and changing it every 6 months. So if you lean heavily on one food group or one meal, it really does become, it's like as if you're pressing the same bell for digestion. The same combination of digestive enzymes have to come out, and that's like pressing the bell too much too often, and it becomes exhausted. So you need to vary the diet.
And so you would see people who are vegans and vegetarians and pescatarians and meat eaters. And is there one type of person over the other who gets constipated more or who has more digestive issues, diet relative? So my real question there is, are meat eaters more constipated than vegetarians or vegans?
Right. Now, I don't have any set answer. I couldn't say I've done studies on it. So just colloquially.
Yeah, from personal experience.
What I see people who go vegetarian and have more bloating and weight gain sometimes, because sometimes the triggers for digestive issues are, the inability to digest cellulose and protein or fibrous stuff, like natural food that is very, very good. And just as much you might see somebody who goes on a low-carb diet or paleo diet and they would have issues. So as far as I can establish, there is no set recipe.
Okay.
It's got to be customized to you. And that I would live by that. I mean, I've met people who've been vegetarian for years and it just doesn't work. I believe it's to do with the way, I believe personally it's got to do with our ancient genes and for hundreds of years we ate meat and suddenly we cut that off, and sometimes maybe that doesn't work, and then maybe somebody else, like I'm sure the blood group diet.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Dr. Peter D'Adamo, and then the paleo was kind of based on that because huge proportion of our population is blood group O, as Irish. We link back to the Basque country. You can link those very old genes to various Celtic cultures, and so we're predominantly O. So possibly there is that thing that we do need protein a little bit if we're really being general, but we can't be. Obviously, there's no general. I have found that Irish people do a little better when they take out those heavy carbohydrates. That's what I've seen in general. I mean, I think we can all identify. Yeah,
so the refined carbohydrates, so chips and burgers and white stodgy stuff.
White carbs and that. We just seem to be, if I am to make a generalisation, and I can't do that. And I've seen the other extreme. I have bodybuilders who come into me who are, they're just poisoning themselves with, just pure protein diets. And, the skin reflects that. Of course. You see that in the skin, and that is not good enough either. You have to keep it clean. It has to be a balance. There's nobody should be, because that's too acidic, that's too much protein, it's too, there's too much in there. So really it's the balance and having that. In my clinics, we do food intolerance testing to see. But I do believe it is quite individual to the person, really.
Yeah, so it was just a random question that came to you as we were chatting there. It's like, I wonder, is there, because obviously with as vegetarians and vegans, people eat more, you would imagine.
Yes.
A more varied diet, and obviously with the likes of the paleo, where there's massive quantities of protein and there's huge, 2 grams per kilo body weight or whatever, sometimes which can be way too much.
Yes.
Let's talk hydration.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, great topic. Tea, coffees, water, all this lovely stuff in terms of gut health. Water presumably is a biggie.
Well, yeah, so I love water, and you have your water there, and it's great. Water is so important to us, but why? Okay, so when we drink water, we have this lovely big master organ called the brain, who wants to take water. If you've got a dehydrated brain and you put it into a sink, it would probably drink 3 of those 1 litre bottles before it would be. Liver's the same. Your liver's going to do the same thing. So a lot of the time when we drink water orally, the brain takes it, because the brain's the master organ. Okay? So if we take then, but all the other organs need it just as much. Our liver needs it. Our bowel needs it. So you have a lot going on. So when we drink water, and then we drink coffee, and then we take salt, and then we take alcohol, we're stripping. And people get headaches, they get constipation due to that dryness, because they've stripped it with a diuretic out. Now, here I am saying to people, very often when you have your colonic hydrotherapy, you feel great. Why? Massive thing is that your bowel actually drinks water. One of its big main functions is to drink water, because what comes from the small intestine is semi-solid, and what exits the bowel is solid. So the journey from small intestine to exit of the bowel, it's 5 foot, as I said, is to take out water, and it gives it to the liver, and the liver uses it to filter. So when we are dehydrated, we're going to be constipated, and that means gut health issues. So
if you're not drinking enough water, you have a higher risk of constipation.
Absolutely. People go to festivals, and they drink alcohol, and they eat all the wrong food, and maybe they don't eat at all, and they take in toxins and drugs and various things, and they wonder why they feel absolutely suicidal when they come back, because their gut health, they've just absolutely, defied all the rules. Those rules you're talking about, hydration, a major issue.
And tea and coffee in terms of good health, good, bad?
I would say to people, if you can, try to limit consumption of coffee to 1 a day.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, some people say tea has a certain amount of hydration, and herbal tea has, normal hydration. It's the same as water. It's non-diuretic. Green tea has a little bit of a diuretic because it's caffeine based, but supplement with the tea and herbal tea and all those things as well. That's so important.
Okay, so don't cut everything out. Balance, moderation, kind of coffee days, no harm whatsoever.
No harm.
And herbal teas are always really good, and then lots of water.
Lots of water. If you think you've drank enough water, drink some more. We have the brain and the liver and the bowel all, fighting for water.
And what about, the next tip is around foods that are high in sugar, added sugars. Let's chat about those for a while.
Yeah, so acidity in the body is where sugar, it's one of the things that sugar is a problem around. Sugar, there's so many interesting studies about sugar. The acidity that sugar creates is a perfect environment for disease to live in, and that's when, when you think about it like that, and you think about how you want to really starve disease, you think about cutting sugar out and how important that is. So yes, it is, and it's a tricky one because it's addictive.
Of course, makes you feel good, instant gratification, instant energy,
boost to the blood sugars, instant rush of energy. Very, very tricky. So if you're coming off sugar, it's a 3-day addiction. So if you're struggling for the first 3 days, that's not going to last forever. So try to struggle against it for 3 days and just eat more fats, good fats, and water and things, even fats you wouldn't normally eat. Let yourself have them if they're sugar free for those 3 days, and then once that's over, you'll find miraculously no sugar addiction. It's gone, and you don't want it. So it's a funny old balance. But yeah, sugar is the plague of the nation, really. In terms of health on so many levels. Of course, it feeds things like candida as well. Candida being the bowel, one of the most prominent, the most well-known bowel bad gut floras, if you like. It lives and feeds on sugar. So when we're trying to starve out sugar or starve out candida, we really are going, we're low-carbing it. Carbohydrate being sugar in general. That's just what it is. So low-carb diet means low-sugar diet. Yeah. So it's very, very easy to think of it like that. And it's so many health benefits to it. It's hard initially, but we must eat carbohydrates in other ways, not to think that we shouldn't.
Obviously coloured, fibrous, all of that.
Yeah, because when you cut it out and think that you're going to, a good thing to do is to eat that bit more fruit, or even berried coloured fruit, because it's not too high in sugar in general, and I do believe as a predominantly blood group O nation, we can handle those indigenous foods better than tropical fruits, which are higher in fructose as well. So they almost have they're genetically modified to have high sugar levels as well, almost like sweets now.
And finally, fermented foods.
Yeah, so fermented foods are foods that have, so there's so many. Most foods can be fermented. So things like cabbage is very common, and they go back. The fermentation process is ancient. It was just a way of storing food, because we didn't have fridges and we didn't have preservatives, and that's really it. So it's been in the diet for, historically. So having some fermented food that is high quality, is so very beneficial. It seems to be that we do need it. And I say to people, where would you put that? People say to me, well, where would you put that into a good health plan? I would call that maintenance. It may not correct. People say, oh, but sure, I take fermented kombucha and I take some kimchi. Sure, I don't need probiotics. Well, I wouldn't say so. I'd say it's more like maintenance of the good garden that's already right, because we all need a bit of that. That's always been in our diet. Ancient cultures like kimchi from Korea, we know, that's been around. But even with ourselves here, fermentation has been around for, it was the only way to preserve things. So everybody has a certain amount of it, or needs a certain amount of it in their diet. But it's maintaining good gut health. I don't think it's going to bring you back to correcting a big problem like imbalanced gut flora that's gone on for a long time, that's chronic. So it's more of something we should add, consciously. Kombucha is very good. You can make your own. There's so many brands. I think most shops sell it now. It's
become very
accessible.
trendy now, which is great.
Yeah, it's very accessible. So it's a good thing. It's absolutely good maintenance, and you can feel the benefits of it, no doubt, when you do introduce that.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come in and chat to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, as always, you are listening to the Real Health Podcast in association with Leia Healthcare with me, Carl Henry. This is the third in our Health Masterclass series. We wanted to pick 3 kind of different topics that you may not have heard of before. Obviously, sex being one, the brain aging being another, and then the gut health being another. I'm bringing in experts to give you some really simple tips to take away. Now, don't forget, we have a wonderful competition to celebrate breaking the 1 million listener mark here on the Real Health Podcast in our first year of podcasting. To enter the competition, you can win books, you can win Fitbits, and lots of other lovely free prizes, and everyone loves free stuff. So head over to independent.ie and just go onto the Real Health Podcast page. You'll find it, and the link will be there. Fill out the survey, and you're into the draw, and we'll announce the winners over the course of the coming weeks. We have some more brilliant episodes to come. We're just working on our next batch of guests, and trust me, you're going to absolutely love them. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, it's at Carl Henry PT on Instagram and on Twitter, and realhealth@independent.ie is our email address. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Slán go fóill.
Leia Healthcare. It's good to live. Proud sponsor of the Real Health Podcast with Carl Henry.